Get ready. Helena Hustle is now live. Here, we will showcase successful leaders in business, athletics, healthcare, and all things that make Helena a great place to live. Join Dr. Daniel Bridge, owner of Endurance Chiropractic, as he searches out amazing individuals who are making a tremendous difference in this place we call home. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired with the Helena Hustle podcast.
So welcome to Helena Hustle. Carrie is my most patient guest I've ever had. I forgot a cord and it made it so we couldn't record for a long time. So Carrie, thank you for still being here.
You're welcome.
And
yes.
I'm really excited to learn more about you and Florence, Crittenton. So, but as you know how we start out the podcast with two truths and a lie. Do you think you can stump me today?
Oh, I hope so.
Okay.
I think so. They're all pretty ridiculous.
Are they?
So yeah.
Good. Good. This will be fun.
Let's see. My first one is I am a massive dog lover. And for being in human services, I think I love dogs more. So I actually have 10 dogs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. My second one is I really dislike cats. And so this one was really unfortunate. I had a time that I had a cat sleep on my head when I was staying at somebody's house and ate half the hair off of my head. And the third one is, despite being a college athlete, I had to have open heart surgery.
Oh, gosh.
So those are my three ridiculous.
Okay, I'm gonna say that you don't like dogs.
Okay.
Don't have 10 dogs. That's the lie.
I love dogs, but I do not have 10 dogs. I only have one. Only because my husband won't let me. I would have 10
dogs. What would you have?
I think I would have a very large group of golden retrievers and one mini Aussie to herd them around.
That would be fantastic to have 9 golden retrievers running around. I had a golden retriever when I was a kid.
Yeah, we had them growing up, and now I have a mini Aussie. So those are my two.
A mini Aussie?
Yes.
How big is a mini Aussie?
They're about 35 pounds.
Oh, okay.
Just ball of fluff.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, cute.
She's the boss, though, of
What's
our
her
family.
Name?
Chloe.
Okay.
Yeah.
My brother has an Aussie. So.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Yeah. So.
Well, I can't wait to hear about. Let's start with the open heart surgery. What happened there? And what was your college sport?
I ran track at Montana State.
Nice.
So
what events?
400 hurdles were kind of my specialty, but
brutal.
then the 100 and the 200. 100 hurdles relay. So
did you ever throw up after the 400 hurdles?
Not after a race.
Okay.
But training for it.
Okay.
The race was easy. It's the training for that race that is so hard.
Fantastic.
Yes.
I did the 4x4, but I mostly did the 800, the mile, and the 2 miles. So
so the 400 hurdles are very similar to the 800.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah. Although I hated running the 800.
It's brutal too.
Oh man, I had to do it a couple of times, and it was not my favorite.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. So I had open heart surgery 3 years ago. Just celebrated my 3rd anniversary of my surgery. Had no idea I had a congenital heart defect. Was born with it, and 3 years ago, just all of a sudden, it decided to go bad really fast. So I had a leaking aortic valve, I have a bicuspid valve, and my valve just started to go bad. Had an aneurysm that did not go, which I was very, very lucky. And I was lucky that I still was running, so I could tell right away something was wrong. And just one thing led to another, and within 3 months I was diagnosed and in surgery, and I now have a mechanical heart valve and an aneurysm repair, and am doing great, back to running.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, so it was very, very crazy
That is crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy to make it through everything I had and be a runner and not have never had a murmur, never had anything. So so it was pretty wild ride.
I've heard of multiple people having heart related issues get picked up by their Apple Watch.
Yeah, I didn't start wearing an Apple Watch until after, but that is why I wear it now, is because of my heart. Crazy. And they're very good at picking things up. They can actually literally be a lifesaver. So yeah.
Well, I'm so glad to know that you're doing great.
Yeah.
So you're running. Do you do just for fitness, or do you do any races?
Yeah, mostly just for fitness now.
Nice.
I stopped racing not long after I stopped running competitively. it was such a big part of my life, but when you run competitively like that, it's really hard to take a step back and not do it full time,
right.
and be okay with the fact that things are going to start to, kind of slip. And, running the 400 hurdles does not really translate. People just assume that you can run miles and miles and miles, and sprinters are not long distance runners. We're not put together the same way. So I tried training a couple of times I did 5Ks and I did a couple of 10Ks, but honestly, the training for the 10K, I was usually ended up injured before I even got to the race. So I'm like, yeah, I think I'm just going to train for fitness, and it's just a really big part of my life and my mental health, and just and now it's just such a source of joy for me to be able to do something that I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to do again.
That's amazing.
So
you don't take it for granted, eh?
No, I never take a day that I am able to get a run in for granted ever. It's just, I'm really grateful.
It makes me want to go run.
Yeah, right. When I was in cardiac rehab, the first day they said, "What's your goal?" I said, "I want to run again." And they said, "Okay." And I thought they'd say, "No way." And so by the time I left rehab, so I was running again at 7 weeks after my surgery. And I just thought, if I don't commit to doing it now, I think I'll be too afraid to try again. And they were fully supportive. I mean, you're first running, you're hooked to every piece of equipment they possibly can. But it was really important to me to be able to get that thing back that had been such an important part of my life.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
That's inspiring.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
I can't wait to hear about this cat.
Yes.
Sounds terrible. What?
Yes. So I'm allergic to cats, which is why I don't like them.
Yeah.
So I was staying at some people's house in Sydney, Montana. This is 20 plus years ago. I was really young. I was actually staying with them when I was traveling for work, and I was staying with them really tired. I'd been traveling for days, and I just kind of conked out, and I'm a very heavy sleeper, and they'd shut the door, but in the night, the cat had somehow opened the door, and this cat was notorious for liking hair.
I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't know that was a thing either. I don't know if that is an actual cat thing or just
this psycho cat,
little bit of a demented cat. And it sat up on my head and ate along the part of my hair. So I woke up in the morning. The worst part was I could not breathe. My eyes were swollen shut, and I'm like, oh no, that cat got in here. So I'm trying to get to the bathroom, and I'm stumbling around because my eyes are swollen shut. I can't get my contacts in, but I'm kind of looking in the mirror, and I'm like, what is going on?
Doesn't look quite right.
It doesn't look right. So I finally get my contacts in, and it looked like somebody had taken, like not a full razor, like not down, but just, kind of maybe a 2-guard to the side of my head. And I just panicked. I'm like, what? I mean, I was like 23 years old. I'm like, what am I going to do? So I went upstairs and I said, I think that maybe your cat possibly ate my hair. And the gal that we were staying with, she turned around and she had I will never forget that she was making eggs, and she dropped the frying pan on the ground. And you cannot make this up. Right as I said that, the cat walked by and threw up all my hair.
Oh.
It was the most bizarre. I felt like I was in an episode of Punk'd or something. It was quite an ordeal to grow my hair out.
What did you do?
I changed
Lots
the
of
part
hats.
in my hair. My hair was pretty long at the time. So I called the gal that does my hair, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Are we just going to have to shave my head? And she's like, no. And so we just parted my hair the other direction until it grew out. So then I had all these hairs as it was growing out. It was
That's
really
crazy.
Yeah, it took me about 3 months to get
I didn't even know their teeth could break.
just
hair.
gnaw on it like that. Yeah.
Wow.
And the worst part was this gal said, oh my gosh, we've had this problem before. And I'm like, really?
You still have the cat?
And you still have the cat. So the cat's name was Callie Sue, and they renamed it Carrie Sue. So I have a cat in Sydney now. Well, I'm sure I don't anymore. I'm sure he's long gone, but yeah.
That's
so
funny.
It was
I'm
a
sorry.
very strange scenario.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. That was awesome to share. So, Now you went to MSU.
I did.
What did you study?
I actually studied business marketing, which is, and I have a minor in small business and entrepreneurship. Yeah.
You grew up in Helena.
I did. Born and raised. Yep.
Did you have an idea that you wanted to move back or make this your long-term home?
I thought I would never move back here.
Okay.
When I left, not in a bad way. I always loved coming home.
Yeah.
But I just didn't see myself moving back here. I went to school to start out to be an architect, which is really funny. But I just didn't see myself moving back home. It was always going to be home to me. I'd always wanted to come home and visit. And but honestly, it was my husband's job. Let's see, 3 or 4 years after we graduated from college, that brought us back to Helena. So
is he also from here?
No, he's from Butte. He's a Butte rat.
Nice.
Yep.
And what does he do for work?
He is a financial advisor and the branch manager at D.A. Davidson.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So that's what brought you guys back.
Yeah. So his work brought us back here. Yeah. Yeah. So I was really hesitant. I felt like we were really building our life in Bozeman. We didn't have kids yet. And I just kind of felt I was working for the university and I felt like that was going to be really hard to how those skills and that experience was going to transfer back here. Felt like Helena was really sleepy at the time compared to being in Bozeman. And I mean, honestly, I can't imagine our lives anywhere else now. I really can't. I'm so happy to be raising our kids here. It's crazy. They have gone to every one of the same schools I went to. We moved to the same side of town that I grew up on. I was a Sun Haven kid and, it's been great. It's been it's been the right place for our family for sure. And I'm really happy now to be a contributing member of the community that raised me, you know? Yeah.
Hindsight's pretty magical that way.
It
right?
really is. Yes, it really, really is. And I think as much as I love Bozeman, it's a different city than when we were there.
Right.
And, I love going back and visiting and, but yeah, it's been great. Yeah.
When you were going to school, did you envision yourself working in a nonprofit?
No, I really didn't. When I moved from architecture, honestly, I probably should have just gone into engineering. My parents owned an engineering firm. My dad was an engineer. I was raised in it. I worked in the field. I worked for them. I was a surveyor. I did all of the, small business. You just work for your parents when you're a little kid. I ran blueprints from the time my brother and I were so little that our arms weren't long enough. So we just stand on either side. And it was just part of our family. But I think I wanted to kind of stay in that business, but not do exactly what my dad did. And so I thought architecture, it turns out I am not right-brained enough to be an architect. Should have probably just gotten into engineering, but I went into business because I did like the business aspect of what my parents ran. And I got into it and I thought for sure that I wanted to go into major marketing in a big city, for a Nike I was running at the time and, doing marketing, and there were some great opportunities out there at that point. But I took an internship in the athletic department in the summer, starting my junior year. And I started working for the Scholarship Association. So doing fundraising for the scholarships. And I think the thing that kind of turned for me was I had lived a very lovely life. I had a great childhood. I was really lucky. And I didn't realize how lucky I was until I went to school and I met some of my friends that were also athletes. And I started to see for some of these guys that were coming out of Compton and just really tough places that if they wouldn't have had those scholarships and that opportunity, that was what was pulling them out of there and really changing their lives. And I started getting really passionate about people being able, and especially young people being able to have those opportunities to kind of change their own trajectory. And I started from my internships, I ended up just going into a job in the athletic department right when I graduated. And I think that just kind of sealed the deal for me. So when we moved back here, I worked for the symphony for a little bit, just kind of trying to, in the financial advising world, when you make those changes, they have to happen really quickly. And so I didn't really have time to find a job. I stayed in Bozeman for a while and finished my work. And so just spent some time just kind of rediscovering the city. And then I went to work on the hospital association, the Montana Hospital Association. I really liked that. And I got into some advocacy, but honestly, at the end of the day, something just kept pulling my heart back to being more on the ground and helping people. And so I just kind of gravitated towards human service, nonprofit work, and stayed in the development fundraising world, started in grant writing, and then was a development director. But I didn't really, that wasn't the path that I anticipated. But it just kind of grabbed my heart, and I've just kind of lived my life kind of following my heart and, what feels important to me. So,
yeah, you can never, you feel good about whatever happens, regardless of the outcome, if you know you made the decision for the right reason.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that overwhelming feeling of knowing how lucky I have been and wanting to make sure that other people are able to do that. Yeah.
So take me from the symphony to Florence Crittenton.
Yeah. So when I was I moved to the hospital association. I was the education coordinator there. Yeah. And so I did all the statewide training for a lot of the critical access hospitals and started to learn. So I had kind of started working in nonprofit and sort of human services in the athletic department. And then I got that healthcare part of it brought in through the hospital association, and I started to see the challenges of rural Montana and how hard it is for people to access healthcare. And so that became really, really fascinating to me. And like I said, I started doing a little bit of advocacy work at the state legislature, and then started helping our national lobbyists do some work. And I became a contact for the federal program officers that were coming in. And I just became very passionate about people understanding what access was really like in this state and what it was really like to live in this state and be able to, take care of your family and yourself. But I was traveling a ton with that job. So I had, at the time, a little girl. And then when we had our second daughter, I just said, I can't be traveling like this. I was traveling at least a week a month, and that just, my husband's job was too busy, and I just couldn't do that. And because I had grown up in this town, there's just kind of an affinity for Florence Crittenton. It's just been here forever, and it really grabbed my attention. And then I was a mom on top of everything else, and I was like, that's really where my heart wants to be. And I actually applied for a job there, and I didn't get the first job I applied for there. Yeah. So I applied again about 6 months later, just for a grant writing position. Applied for the job when I was on maternity leave. Didn't tell my husband until I got the job.
Hey, guess what?
I'm moving jobs. And I just thought, I'm just going to kind of sit in the corner and write grants and just do this thing and raise my babies. And within a year, I was the development director. I don't know. It was the perfect combination of all of those things that I had learned and the things that I cared about, and then having that extra passion from being a mom. And it was just the right place to be. And and then I was in, and then I just was a student of, again, an engineer's brain. I think probably I needed to understand the why behind the work we did and what led people to the places that they were when we were working with them, and how the science works behind brain development and all of those things. And any kind of education, any kind of training I could get. And then my passion was to go out and talk to other people about that. And so being the development director for 10 years was really important way for me to learn the business. And then when our executive director retired, the board asked me if I would apply, and just kind of a natural progression into the position. So I've been the ED now for 4 years.
Okay.
So
when did you first start working there?
Into March. I started there. This is actually funny. I shouldn't have to think about this. I started there on my 30th birthday. So in 2010.
Okay.
Yep. That was my very first day.
Okay. And how long before you were there, before you realized like, this is definitely the right place for me? I
would say probably 6 months. Yep. 6 months in, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And I wanted to do more, and I wanted to learn more. And it felt just really comfortable.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Not comfortable in the way I felt like I didn't know enough about the work we were doing, but comfortable in that was the place I was supposed to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you describe your mission at Florence Crittenton?
I think we're really in the business of opportunity. The families that we work with have come from such generational challenges. And there's really never been that ability for them to leave that space. And I think what our job is to take the birth of a child and use that as an opportunity for an entire family. So many of our clients will say if it wouldn't have been for their kids, they may have not chosen to seek treatment. Or for our really young moms, it's the thing that unfortunately, you know, a pregnancy, it becomes the thing that gets them out of maybe that system and removes them from that situation that they have been in, that kind of invisible almost in some of those situations. I just think there's such a beautiful opportunity with families, and that's really our job, is to get clients in some of their darkest moments, really, and be able to help them begin to heal and be able to break that cycle.
Okay.
I think that's true even when you get into our programs that are all the way out, more community-based, like our early childhood programs, our childcare programs. Even for families that are just our mainstream families in the community seeking childcare, I think there's opportunity for growth, and there's opportunities for families to return to work when they have really great childcare. So I think that really is our mission, is to help families grow and thrive, and to not let their past dictate their future. And yeah, that child is just such a beautiful opportunity for that.
So are most people, do they find you on their own, or are they referred to you by a healthcare provider or something like that?
Yeah, for the most part, they are referred by somebody else. Not always the case, but for the most part, typically our families in our residential programs are, they're typically what we would call system involved. So for our really young moms, that's usually the foster care system. Either they have already been in the foster care system, or by nature of what has happened to them and maybe that has caused the pregnancy, it has put them into the foster care system. The juvenile justice system can sometimes, so juvenile probation can be an option as a diversion for some mamas. And then same with our residential treatment program for substance use disorder. Quite often that is a diversion out of some of the treatment courts. Again, CPS. So if a baby has been removed due to a mom's substance use, we can be the path to reunification. So that's sometimes a combination of mom and CPS worker working together. And then we get, school counselors with our homeless populations, just somebody that has come across another shelter. At times it has been faith communities that have referred, their members to us. But a lot of it does come from somebody else that has been involved in their lives. Not always the case though. Some moms self-refer. Definitely the case in our community-based programs. So we have home visiting, parenting classes, those types of things. Those are quite often self-referred. And then same with our childcare programs. Usually people are seeking out childcare for their families. So it's a little bit of a mix for depending on the situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you say, are there any misconceptions or different things you wished the general community understood differently about the services that are available?
Yeah, there are. One for sure is that I think there's a misconception that we only serve families in Helena, and we actually in our residential program serve families from all over the state.
Oh, okay.
We've served every single county. We serve all of the reservations. And we actually have served a few people from out of state over the years. But what's interesting is that most end up staying in the Helena community. This ends up becoming home, which I really, being a kid that grew up in this town and knowing how well this town just takes care of its own, I really love that a lot of families stay here.
Yeah.
So I think that's one misconception just about the organization. Another one is that I think people mostly know us for our residential programs, and the fact that we have those community-based home visiting, parenting, early childhood programs that anyone in the community can use, and usually for free.
Wow.
I think that's a really important thing for the Helena community, especially to know, is that we are here for every family. And yes, we serve a very, very we serve a very large continuum, and some have very, very intense needs, but not always. And we don't want to wait for every family to have to get to that point. Yeah. So I think that's really important. I think for understanding our target population, that, of our very severe client, most high needs clients, I think that idea that, especially when it comes to substance use, the idea that a mom is purposely making a choice, and you kind of hear some of these, well, she's picking substance use over her child. And I think that it's hard to grasp the concept that is really a medical diagnosis of substance use disorder, and that it really isn't a choice at that point.
Nor is it even like a self-control, a self-willpower thing.
No, it
just
is
fitting the right tools for that person.
Exactly. I often liken it to a diabetic. As much as they want to get better, and they will cut things out of their diet and do all of that, but at some point they have to have the insulin support, right? Their bodies just can't do that on their own. So they make a lot of changes in their life, but they have to have that kind of intervention and lifetime support. And that's a very hard concept for us with mental health and substance use to understand. They're very invisible diseases, and they cause us to have behaviors that, if you don't have that going on in your mind, that's very hard to understand.
Sure.
And so I think that's one misconception. And I think generally as a society, we're starting to understand that better. But I still think there's a really hard emotional attachment for us as human beings when we see a child involved.
Right.
And we just instantly can't understand how you can make those decisions. And that's very hard for our moms. Nobody's harder on themselves than those women that are going through that. And I think that is a huge part. And what has happened to them, their history and story, is what has often led them to that path. And that's where we get into some of that intergenerational. And I think we can't even begin to understand what some of these women have gone through in their own lives.
Absolutely.
And now we're seeing them at a point in time. And it's really hard not to make some judgments on decisions that you're seeing in that point of time without knowing that whole history. And that's really our job, is to help them heal from that so that they can move forward. But I think that's one of the things that's hardest for me when I hear sometimes, in the public, or there's some misconceptions, in the legislature and things like that. And it's much more complex than it looks like on the surface.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a tough thing. Do you have any maybe like inspirational stories that you can share from your experience there? Oh
my gosh, yeah. So I've been there 14 and a half years. So I have had the, excuse me, I've really had the honor of getting to meet a lot of these families and remain close to them. I mean, you get close to certain ones and that you maintain contact, but yeah, I've had some really great stories of, one was a mom that came back. She left right as I was getting there. And so then a couple of years later, maybe 4 years later, she called and said, I'm going to be in Helena and I really want to stop by. I want my daughter to see where she was born. I want her to see her first home. And her daughter was little, like 4 maybe.
Okay.
And so they came back and we just kind of got to visit, and she was so proud of where she had come from. She was doing so well. She was married, and I think maybe she'd had another baby by then. And, but she was so proud to bring her daughter back and see their first home. And we still had staff that were there that had been there. And, when she was there, and just to see her reconnect. And so we've stayed in touch over the years. She and her daughter spoke at our big fundraiser, Paint the Town Pink, a couple of years ago, and they both spoke. And just to see the relationship between the two of them. And at one point her daughter just kind of like mic dropped on her. It's like, yeah, top that, Mom. Just amazing. So it's been really fun to watch them kind of grow up, but there was a moment in time this year, this spring. So it's graduation card season, and you're getting, one of my kids is in high school, so we're getting all of them. And I opened it, and one of them was hers. And it just...
Wait, the little girl?
The little girl.
The 4-year-old, okay.
And it just stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, whoa, that is really amazing. And nobody knows, right? Nobody knows anything different. And I think the thing that's hard for us is people always want to talk about the outcomes. And I always say it's the lack of outcomes. They just integrate when we do it right. They just integrate into the community and they just become one of us. And their crazy success story is just a normal story. And that was just such a perfect depiction of that. You know, I was so proud of her. I mean, it was amazing. And then another one, just kind of, again, when you're working in that field, we get a very intense place with those families, and we know all of their story, and then they move on, and we can't, well, by law, you can't actually follow them. You can't study human beings. It's against the law, but I mean, you have to let them live their life, and we're always there for them, but we're a snapshot in time. And so sometimes you kind of wonder how everyone's doing after a couple of years. And I was dropping my daughter off at school one day. I think she was either in kindergarten or first grade. I cannot remember. At Fort Georgians, and this little girl was waiting for her, and little 5 and 6 year olds, they go running up to each other and hold hands, and away they go. And this little girl, I was like, why does she look so familiar? And I just happened to glance over, and I saw the mom that had dropped her off, and it was one of our clients, and she had gotten there. And our kids, I remember our kids were the same age, like within a month of each other. So I had a 3-month-old when I went to work there. And so I was really relating to the moms because I was still feeding my daughter and, doing all those things. And I thought, you ever want to talk about the perfect depiction of these are all families that live in our community, and they can either be productive, just like I said, normal parts of our community, or what happens when it doesn't, and what's that kid's life like. And I have since watched us drop our kids off every day. Just finished 8th grade, and we have seen each other every single day for years now. And it's just it's almost been sometimes my daily reminder, like on the hard days of why. It's funny how I don't know if my brain almost like picks her out when I really need that reminder, or if it's just, we just see each other every single day. Our kids have no idea, they will, and we know they never will. And, we see each other, we say hello as moms and everything. But I think that's just been such a powerful thing for me to see that they can just have these beautiful lives that are just like everybody else, if they're given the opportunity to kind of stop in that moment of time.
That's what I was just thinking about. There's those hard days, and, I've experienced that too. And sometimes thinking about the difference that maybe has taken place in someone's life, it makes all the struggle worth it for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I have definitely over the last 14, 15 years really understood that idea of we can never judge what somebody is going through when they're walking down the street next to us. We have no idea that could be the greatest victory, that they're just walking into their job, and that's a really big deal that they're even in that place, or what happened as they're walking in that door, that they're the struggles that they are carrying, the weight of the world,
Have you seen that Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember it very well?
Not very well.
It's this...
A little bit,
He's a banker. He's involved in this little community.
Yep.
And he gets to see... He's wishing he was never alive, and he gets to see a vision of what the city would look like without his influence there. And so, like with the families that come through your place, what does that look like where their life is now, where it could have been from... maybe a seemingly small interaction, or maybe a lot of care. You never know. I guess what I'm saying is what kind of influence you're going to have on somebody.
It's really true. And I think for our staff, sometimes that feels like that overwhelming obligation is to have that. We have this opportunity with them, and we don't want to waste it on our end. We want that to be such a powerful and meaningful point in their life, and have things built with us that they carry for the rest of their lives. And I think our clients will tell you that. They'll come back, and one of our former clients is on our board of directors. Incredible young woman. She's spoken in front of Congress. I mean, just, you want to interview somebody, she would be an amazing person to interview. She's just, it's just really amazing, but, and she will say, Oh, it didn't all stick when I first moved out, you know, it didn't, but she said over time, I felt like I could come back to this foundation that had been built. So I think, we think about that all the time. What is the small moment in time or the big moment or the big things that helped create that new opportunity and that other path, excuse me. And I think, we talk about that all the time. Everybody says that there's in our lives, we have several moments in time where we can make decisions, fork in the road. And for these families in the really, really tough situations, there is no decision to make because that other fork is not, that road is not there. There is one path. It's a really dark one. And they have never, since the day they were born, been able to have an opportunity to have another path. And I think our job is really, we can't build the whole one, but we can start it and even give them at least the opportunity to go that direction. I think that's especially true for our really young moms. That is the only path, and somebody else is guiding, their lives when they're kids. And so, it's a real special opportunity and moment in time. And we take that very, very seriously. It takes a huge amount of, commitment, and it's hard work because of that pressure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Carrie. I appreciate you sharing all this.
Yeah, you bet.
Do you have, I'd love some last words from you, whether it's maybe a piece of advice you would give someone who's considering Florence Crittenton services, or maybe if you're looking for some community support or anything like that.
Yeah, I would say for anyone that is seeking services, don't be afraid of it and don't be ashamed of it. And know that there are people that are there to help without judgment. I think the fear of seeking services, especially for moms and for parents, means that we are admitting that we're maybe not doing right by our kids. And that is the hardest feeling in the world. We always want to do, I've never met a parent ever that doesn't want the absolute best for their kids. And so be brave. It's the bravest decision you can make to ask for help, and people will be there to help you. So don't ever be afraid to ask for help as a parent, as a person that just might be struggling with something. I think especially in this community always wants to help each other. For the general community and just for our support, we do very much rely on the support of the Helena community, but the state of Montana. The work we do is very intense. It requires a lot of human beings to interact with humans, and that costs money. So we do operate our organization at about 30% fundraising dollars. So we are always looking for that support. But I think even beyond that, just that general idea of be kind to each other and to those around us. And if you see somebody struggling, do our best to not see it through our own lens with our own history, but to try to understand that we may not understand that and see it from and meet people where they are, because that's the best way that we can help. And honestly, doing that, we're all better in this community if our community as a whole, as the individuals that make the community are better, are healthier, their well-being and their children's needs are met. Everybody benefits from that. So this really is a community-wide effort.
I couldn't agree with you more. So,
yeah.
125 years in the community, is that right?
Yeah, our 120th anniversary will be next June.
Okay.
125th, sorry, yes. Okay. So we'll be kicking off our year-long anniversary celebration at our Paint the Town Pink event in February. So I'm really excited. Incredible history.
That is.
Could do an entire podcast on the history of that organization. Wow. It's really amazing.
What a blessing for Helena and the whole state, like you mentioned.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of your hard work. And it's nice that you're able to bring your expertise and your college experience to bless this organization.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yes, and thank you for all that you are doing and being part of our community.
Yeah, we love it here. So.
Yeah, great.
Okay, thanks, Carrie.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Helena Hustle podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Once again, thanks for joining us. And we'll catch you in the next episode of the Helena Hustle Podcast.